get started. All right, so welcome. We got a packed house here tonight, so really happy to have everybody here and everybody with us. We got plenty of seats up front here, guys. So anybody that needs to sit down, lots of room up here and over here on the side. All right. So if you guys haven't been to one of our meetings before, we have a pretty typical format that we use. All right, if everybody will quiet down, quiet down. So if you haven't been to one of our meetings before, welcome. Recognize a lot of new faces, a lot of folks that I know have been here before also. So welcome if you haven't, welcome back if you have. Happy New Year. And a few changes here since the last time we met. We have a new chief and some new command staff, new mayor. So a lot of changes that we're looking forward to, and we're looking forward to working with a new group of folks and getting some new ideas going, some new flow of information. So I'm very optimistic about what we can do together, and with this kind of showing here tonight, I think that's a great way to start the year and show that the community's engaged and involved and interested in what the department's doing and what we're doing here at CPC. So I'm really encouraged by everybody being here, and thank you for showing up and supporting community policing in Albuquerque, and specifically here in the Northeast Heights. So that being said, I don't want to delay the discussion that everybody's probably here for. We have our Chief Geier here tonight. I just want to give a little bit of background on this because I've kind of struggled with this for a while here. When I joined the CPC, we had been going through a struggle to get the chief, former chief here for, well, before my time I heard it was a year that they'd been inviting the chief, and didn't get a response, didn't hear from him. We finally got the chief, I think it was this time last year, February, March, something like that. The chief did finally come, but that was after several invitations, lots of cancellations, and I get it, people get busy, and when you're the chief of the Albuquerque Police Department, you got a lot of things to do. But I was just really impressed that Chief Geier responded to my email within a day, maybe less, and was just seems like very easy to work with, and I really hope that that's the relationship that we continue to have and that the city has. So with that, I'll let the chief introduce himself and take it from here.
And I'm a soft speaker, so I'm going to try to maybe move a little this way and hopefully the acoustics will work better. Welcome. I mean, this is a great turnout. I've been in neighborhood meetings where I know Commander Brooks has been here too, where we have 5 to 8 people.
Can't hear a word he's saying.
So to get this kind of meeting and this kind of presence, we're grateful for you. This is what community policing is about. It's about the people. There's an old saying, Sir Robert Peel in 1700, when he first developed police departments in England, developed community policing. One of his statements was, the police are the community and the community are the police. And that is the partnership that we have to strive for. I didn't really prepare anything because obviously your questions are more important than what I have to say, but I do want to kind of give you a little bit maybe of my background so we get an idea of where I am and how much your group actually knows. I did retire from APD back in '94.
Sir, could you try to speak a little bit louder?
Yeah, yes, we need the microphone.
Microphone.
I'll try to talk louder, but just then I won't be able to talk as loud.
What he's saying.
I'll give you my best effort, so if you don't hear me, just raise your hand. Just didn't raise your hand. So I worked for APD for 20 years. Prior to that, I was a police officer in North Suburban Chicago, and I also did 20 years there. I only came to New Mexico. My wife became ill, and doctor's advice is we're trying to get out of the Chicago winters. I think it's like 9 degrees there today, wind chills and snow. Those are part of the problems that we dealt with back then, and so I mean it was my destiny to go to APD. I loved APD when I retired. Basically, the reason then was I got a great offer. Mayor Rancho offered me a position to be the chief of police there. So I spent a little over 3 years there, and I think it was a great transition for me to understand that aspect of the job, learn a little bit about the state legislature, just the dynamics of being a smaller scale. And so when Mayor Keller approached me, probably midterm, mid of his campaign, he just asked if I would consider doing it. I had worked with him, he was a state senator. I actually met him when I was at the Family Advocacy Center. His future mother-in-law was on the board with me, and that's what he had met. So it kind of all came to place, and here I am. So almost in March, it will be 44 completed years in police work. So I've been in, I'd leave you here all night if I told you all the jobs and positions, things that had occurred to me. But I think bringing that experience, plus more importantly, the knowledge of APD, the internal mechanisms, the people, and more importantly, the dynamics of what occurred before the DOJ, and maybe a little bit during the DOJ, and where we're going afterwards. And I can say this right now, our goal is not to look at the past, not to let that hold us down, not to do anything that would be considered pointing fingers or pointing blame. We're at where we're at, and we're going to move forward. And that's the direction. And I don't know if you have any questions specifically with the DOJ, but we have a new compliance bureau commander, and that's Commander, I know from days past, Deputy Chief Eric Garcia, who's here to answer any questions in that regard that you may have. He is our director of it. So he's running that program, and he's going to help us get compliance. And we just have meetings today. So we're working toward that end to move forward, not to look backwards. To that end, today we had some great meetings. I'll give you an idea. We met with, I would say, about 550 officers. We went out to and had community, or what we call citywide briefings. And to that end, I would say there wasn't any negative feedback. I think the officers really are excited about coming back to work these days. They're hopeful that there will be change and some hope. And we gave them that, I think. We told them about some changes were things that they brought up. I have a tooth infection, so I tend to sweat heavy to begin with this infection. I get health flushes, and I think that's part of being old. So it comes with the territory. So bear with me. These vests don't help at all either. But anyway, we kind of got the officers on board to understand that, why they're police officers. Every one of them came onto this job to help people. I guarantee you, during their initial interview, they all told us we want to be cops to make a difference. We want to help into the community. And somewhere we've got away from that. I think they've been afraid. They've been very reactive lately, and kind of just waiting for things to happen. What has happened in the meantime? You guys see it in the newspaper every day. What's gone away? Crime. Okay, and you see that crime in terms of not just broad numbers, statistics. You see victims, right? You see, and that's what I work with victims at the Family Advocacy Center. And you see the faces of the people. You see the damages and the emotional trauma that they go through. There's a person attached to each one of those statistics. And that's our goal is we're going to take back the city. We had 2 meetings today. We met with all the area commanders. We met with all the staff. And we have a new crime initiative. And part of that is to get back to community policing, which is one of the pillars of one of our new program directors that we come up with. Community policing, that aspect, the field officers are ready to do it. They're ready to engage and be part of it. And that was a big part of the program initiatives. As we went around the room, every officer that was in that room had positive suggestions of how we can make the department better. And that's the ground level. That's the boots to the ground. That's the people that have to give us suggestions. I'm at 30,000 feet. I don't always see everything that's going on. And so whether it's policy development or program development, and in addition to that, they get to funnel with your information, what you see at your level, which is right there as well. But we can't be in every neighborhood or behind every closed door or looking over backyards and things. That's where we're the eyes and ears of the department. That's where that community is police, is the police of the community. So we encourage that kind of feedback all the time. And I know I started to look through the Nextdoor websites, and I've seen some great stuff there, from pictures of offenders. I've seen information shared between neighbors. I mean, it is this new era. I mean, most of us in this room have been around probably, you leave your front door open or went over the wall and talked to neighbors. We've got away from that. But the social media can work to our advantage because everybody's on there. I'm not very good at it. You folks, but I have no difficulty with it. But I have a 5-year-old granddaughter that can look through it like it was nothing. So the next generation, this will be, the day of that is our officers have lost how to communicate a little bit, and we have to can't be texting somebody is, pull the car over and text it to the next car to get the message. You got to use communication skills. So, we're working toward that end. But I mean, in addition to, the meeting we had today, we met with a whole bunch of partners because we need help. We are shorthanded. So we had all the command staff talk about what they're going to do and how we're going to work as a team. I think that's the biggest effort, is there's no silos, no area commands that are separate. They convinced me today they're going to share resources, they're going to cover for each other. We're going to give them some extra resources from units such as like SWAT and K9, even horse-mounted. You may see horses in your neighborhoods. We want people out there and visible. The 5 areas that were identified in the journal, those are the areas that are main focus. But we also have some underlying agendas that include what's the base, what do you folks think is the basis of all the crime?
Drugs.
I heard it from different angles. Drugs fuels all this. And I mean, we're not talking low-level offenders. I think we really have to work on diversion programs early on, because once they get to the system, it's a whole new college of hard knocks. They're going to learn the hard way, and they're going to find more resources for them to get the drugs. So we have to do that diversion. That'll be part of the community policing aspect. But the hard aspect is we got to take some of the dealers and go up to the top as we can. Because if we get rid of that, that's a big source of the problems. And when we're talking, hotspot policing or those places, we're going to do that in terms of saturations and again working with the neighbors, knocking on doors, explaining to people, which don't beat your cars warming up. Other kinds of tips like that, work with crime prevention aspects of that. But we're going to be behind the scenes also, identifying the people that are the most prevalent offenders. You guys know that if you read the papers, what happens? I can tell you this: an auto theft thief is arrested, he's released on recognizance of bond. And what does he do that next day? Okay, so our program is going to be, we know who those people are. Well, we're going to start doing some old school policing. We're going to follow them around. We got pawners that go to pawn shops 17, 18 times a month, pawning hundreds of items. How many flat screen TVs do you own? Could you pawn 10 flat screen TVs in a month? How many pieces of jewelry? Buckets full of jewelry, and even handguns, which is, in some of these cases, these are convicted felons. So we'll be able to go after some of those people. We follow a pawner around that has a warrant. We can stop him eventually, put him in jail. Eventually, we're going to catch him in the act. So we'll have another crime in addition to the warrant. He ain't going to go out on the street. Okay, judges, the case management, whatever, they're restricted to do something. We're going back to some using technology. For a while, we've got away from bait cars and camera systems and some of the other stuff that we've used as force multipliers. It can't be everywhere, but crime of opportunity is going to be a crime for them. That's right. They're going to see that, whether or not it's our vehicle or somebody else's. We catch them and we can get them put away. And maybe, again, these are people that are active warrants or other things that we can get felony cases against them. Eventually, it's going to catch up. The new DA is working very hard. He's got a program. He calls it the 300 as far as the top of it, but he was left with, if you ever went to the DA's office, case files that would fill this room and probably half this center. He organizes to the point where he's got offenders broken down by felony offenders going back to 2015, 1 or 2 cases, 3 or 4 cases, and then 5 or 4. And the top 300, we're gonna get them indicted, which means we get a chance to pick them up. We get a chance to put them in custody. And the deal is, you take the plea for 5 years or something like that, maximum they can give. Get some answers, they'll add that as well. But we're going after every case consecutively. You're not going in and we'll get them off. If these guys happen to get caught with gun violations, any kind of federal probation or whatever we can get them on, we're going to prosecute federally. I guarantee for, say, an auto thief, maximum sentence for being in possession of stolen auto is 18 months, right? And that's the maximum, which you can do the time for their served and whatever else. They're down to half that. Federal custody for something like that, or if especially a gun charge, they're going to be held for 2 years maybe before they even have their trial, or 10 years, depending on who they are. These are 20% of the criminals that are doing the most violent crimes and the repeat offenders that we see every day. So we've learned there's a system called alerts, which identify the high-risk, high-profile repeat offenders. And a lot, I think, a small portion of them, there's 100 and some maybe 40 at once. Those are going to be the ones we're targeting. We're going to be on them like crazy every day. They're not going to know about this. We're not advertising this media rush. But we're going to be on those people. And once we get them off the street, our data is showing that the average alert offender commits a crime and a half a day. So for every day they're out, I don't know what half a crime is, but they stop doing it halfway. But that many crimes we're going to reduce by getting them off the street. Because in 30 days, that's 45 crimes, something like that, for one person. And that's just the ones we know about. These guys with 5 cases, you know that that's only the 5 the best that we actually still haven't had the cases dropped or whatever, technicality, or more importantly is that they haven't been caught. We know that that's not, if a felon's done 5 felony cases since 2015, or since 2015, I bet you could quadruple that amount. So getting those people off the street is more of a person-based, people-based approach, going after the worst of the worst. And again, that's where our federal partners come in, is they're there, the U.S. attorneys there. We're going to work a little bit with the Attorney General, with the FBI, ATF. Okay, we've got all the resources to help us. And I would say we have like 20, you probably saw when it came in, maybe 25 different agencies, including RDA, state police, as far down south as Valencia County, Bosque Farms, probation, all the units from the prison that go out and take the fugitives. They were all there today. And guess what? They're anxious to go out and do this. They're anxious. And you know why? Because like you, most of them live here. Most of them are raising their families here. Most of them know somebody that, and I bet you if I ask you, you know somebody that victim of a crime? Everybody has had it. My next door neighbor had the car broken into. Everybody knows somebody. And some of those people, one of the former ADAs, had his car stolen. So I mean, everybody knows that, but so far we haven't done a lot about it. So I don't want to be all talk, that's why I've got a lot of people there that can back up our plan, but unlike most task forces, this is ours. And they're committing their resources to Albuquerque. And now with this legislation session that's going to be coming, it's a short one, but we know there's going to be some money directed toward public safety and law enforcement. But more importantly is, I think for the first time in many years, that this governor and maybe the legislature and the senator, everybody up there in the House, they realize that Albuquerque drives the state. So the reason the state is bad in a lot of different areas is because they're neglecting us down here. And so the resources that hopefully they'll devote back to the city will help us do just that, the city. Because more importantly than anything else, and we mentioned community, this isn't about us standing there at a press conference afterwards and patting ourselves on the back with a bunch of numbers. Although we're going to keep close stats and we're going to keep data. We even issued a survey out to the residents in those areas. We got 78 responses the first night. Is you're victims of crime in these high crime areas, how safe do you feel? And not many feel safe. But I'm hoping in 6 months, maybe sooner, definitely by the end of this year, we do a return survey, everybody's going to have to change their opinion. Because again, you're the community, we want this victory for you. And I'd rather stand up there at a press conference with like a room like this, with all you guys behind me, than all the officers that are just there for show, or I can't do what you want to look like. Like, that's what we're about. What we do is we work for you, and we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And I think if we get the officers back, I mean, I've already heard feedback, and maybe you'll see this, and kind of use this as a kind of a pulse on what we're doing, but you're going to see more officers making traffic stops. I drive down the street, and I've never seen such craziness. I mean, in the last months when I haven't been an officer, it's just frustrating. I had people pass me, and you've been close to the motorcycle, cutting up. That's not community. This is our community, like I said. And we've got 2 juvenile gangs that are just doing this mobbing. I think they've been involved. These are juveniles. 5 homicides. We've got 1 gun that's linked to 25 shootings. Well over 100 auto thefts, and what they cover like 3 different area commands that we know that they're focusing on. But we're also going to deal with the juvenile probation, because that system is broken as well. So we're going to have to get some watchdogs and some people to monitor and make sure that we're there. Because these kids are getting a slap on the wrist, and they're not even doing what they're told to do. They're going through drug programs, failing it, and then they come back out, there's no curfew. We found one case where they won't issue a curfew, a nighttime curfew, because this guy was committing his crimes, 15 years old, 16, committing his crimes during the day. What? Come on, I mean, he's not at home at night, he's not playing Nintendo, that's for sure. He's out there with the kids. And And we've got, what were they saying today, Joe, on the Northwest Area Command? They've got surveillance videos from neighborhood cameras where they've got groups of kids jumping out of the car, armed with guns, and these are kids breaking in cars. And as we all know, the incident up in the foothills where the bartender just went out, as any one of us might do, is say, hey, hope that kids will be respected. When we were kids, we got into the house or something like that, and the dog came out, what did we do? We ran like crazy. We didn't stay there with guns and shoot somebody. These kids are not afraid to shoot somebody. And they've had some ADs in the car where I think one kid was shot himself in the head playing with one of these guns that they have. And they have a lot of guns. Juvenile probation has given us information in terms of the hardcore gang members. They all have guns, stolen guns. I don't know where they're getting them. I mean, it's not, these aren't BB guns or airsoft guns, they're real guns. So, I mean, we're making that concerted effort. You tie that in with community policing, you become that arm, not so much the enforcement arm, you become those eyes and ears. You become our feedback. You become the source of information that we can't get from sheer data or sheer statistics, or definitely not from newspaper reports. We have to hear it from you folks. And the fact that you guys are here, voicing your concerns, being part of this, I mean, you're going to help us take that to the community. You're going to be marching down the streets with us sometimes and get, like I said, a victory for these guys. Because by the end of this year, I'd like to see all 300 of those people, every one of the alert offenders. I mean, I think Albuquerque's going to make history in a lot of ways and make national news if we do this right. And I have never seen, even in the 20 years I was here, I've never seen such enthusiasm. Commander Burke just told me that his guys were excited to be part of it. I had one gentleman today, and he's a veteran officer, Ryan was there, and he said, everybody else was talking about what we can do. He says, you know what, I'm just glad that we can be cops again. I mean, that's what we're here for. And I told my officers during the citywide briefings, don't be hiding anymore. Don't be afraid to do your job. DOJ is not here to restrict us. It's a reform effort. We may have made some mistakes. I know we acknowledge that now. We're taking accountability for that. That's the biggest thing. If we take accountability, we move forward. Okay? If you don't take accountability, you dodge it, you don't get anywhere. Matter of fact, you go backwards. So we're taking that accountability, we're moving forward. I mean, if we keep looking back, it's just moving us down. So I think that, those efforts, plus obviously, another one of our priorities is going to be recruiting and retention. And so we're making a full-fledged effort there to be innovative in how we recruit, try to find other methods. That one of the things that I'm having a meeting with one of my deputy chiefs and some of the people at City Hall is we're going to do some metrics on which, campaign is successful. Whether it's a billboard or a newspaper campaign, or this web-based seems to be the best. We're doing internet searches. But we're going to also think outside the box. We got to go outside the state to give a test to an area where Dallas recently had some kind of issues with detention. A lot of officers were looking for jobs elsewhere. We're going to campaign in Dallas. They did it to us here, believe it or not. Denver, Aurora, they were at some of our conferences, and they did take some of our people. I mean, I don't want to do that, but we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis here, folks. One of the only reasons I came back here is just because of it. It's because officers came up to me, people that I know came up to me and said, if you get a chance, you can come back. What would you do? Thought about it. It'd be a lot easier to be staying retired. That's pretty good way for some of the folks to retire. I come back to this, it's going from 0 to 60. I hate the treadmill running full speed. But I'm ready for it. More importantly, the officers are ready for it. The city councilors, I know Councilor Winter, the city councilors, and Councilor O'Malley, everybody is on board. I think the city has got a campaign. It's one city, right? Am I hitting it on the head, sir? So, okay. So, I mean, we're together. I don't think there's any kind of separate entities. I don't think there's any islands or protecting our own territory anymore. We either sink or swim together. And I think that getting you folks in as well is going to give us that army of protection that we need, that support from I know it's here. I know the community needs the police, but I think we appreciate what our officers do. I see things, I've signed commendations every day. You saw in the national news, I think it was one of those syndicated programs, I forgot which one it was, but that officer that adopted the little baby, he was on 2 national news stations in New York. They sent him on their trip. this is, a lot of our officers that are made of that kind of character. They want to help people. And that's the example that we want to portray is we do a lot of good. There was an officer involved shooting. Those officers acted admirably. We're going to, release some of the facts to them. But they were ambushed. I mean, there's no doubt about it from watching the videos. And I can't tell you how close we came to possibly losing and having 2 officers seriously injured. They were in close quarters. We're talking an 11 by 11 room. Number of officers in there, something coming out, a couple of weapons. We're lucky there wasn't no severe damage. But our officers do what they have to do. And they're there to protect you. Because I know in that case, if the manager of that apartment had gone in by himself, we would have had another homicide issue. Because this guy just didn't care. I don't think he was in the minor because of the substance abuse. So, I mean, we've got to work in this together. We know there's other resources from the mental health and substance abuse diversion programs that we can do to catch people early, that maybe for the future, for our kids and grandkids, that make that life better. But for now, we've got to combine all this. We're getting those mortgage crisis units out there. We're getting some teams from mental health that will have clinicians out with us to deal with those problems. Deal with substance abuse. We're going to try to, hopefully, there's more diversion programs. Gentle push, get some of these low-level offenders into that before they become that meth addict that's having to do, the sport is having to go out and do multiple times in the state. Opium, heroin was a big problem years ago. Those junkies mostly were shoplifting and some little burglaries, but now these guys are doing violent crimes. They're doing subway robberies. They're jumping over counters. They don't care. I mean, if you're in there having a hamburger at McDonald's and somebody comes in and pulls a gun, and we saw this years ago in Denny's where, they jumped and they accidentally had a discharge, accidentally in fashion, and killed the poor cook that was in there. I mean, so anybody's at risk at any time with these, because they just don't care. They're focused on one thing, getting their next fix. So we really have to this is a multifaceted, multi-jurisdictional, multi-dimensional program that we all have to be part of. And you guys are a big piece of the puzzle. I'm sincere about that. Community policing, if I asked any one of you the definition, you'd probably get a different definition. It's more of a philosophy than a particular program, but a lot of programs to put together. And whether it's a partnership with a business, for robbery prevention, neighbors, to deal with community problems, or any other type of issues that are going on, we're all in this together. And we may not have that expertise, we're the first responders, but we work closer hand in hand with those groups that are out there for us. And so I don't know how else, and I know we're getting support. This budget year, it looks like we're going to get support. We'll be able to get hopefully some more officers on the street. That'll increase some of our community policing efforts. Because, our officers, they're taking, one officer the other night told me he took 25 calls. Some of these officers, lieutenants especially, are working 12-hour shifts. We used to have three watches, day shift, mid shift, evening shift, and graveyard shift. Now we have 2 lieutenants covering all those officers. And with all the use of force investigations, you just increase their overload. And what's their job to be? They're supposed to be out there help supervising what's out there and work toward helping our officers do their job and controlling the scenes and getting on top of things before they escalate into something serious. But they can't do their job if they're stuck in an office. Or when you were doing an average case review on the use of force, say an armbar, an officer armbarred a suspect just to take him into custody, how long did you have to spend on that one case?
Between 8 to 12 hours for one use of force.
And how long was the officer off the street typically during that?
Probably between 4 to 8 hours, depending on how many witnesses were at the scene.
And then depending on how many officers videoed to that incident, that were 3, 4, we multiply it to do the math. Deputy Chief Garcia, and we're working with our union, has developed a program that I think will streamline it. We think it will actually free up the officers, have them have more time, the sergeants especially, the first line supervisors, so they can be out there watching their troops, protecting their troops. There's just so many things that have to be done. That's what's overwhelming as I go from morning to night with meetings. And these are the ones that I like because I can actually interact with folks that I think are down to earth, that really people we need to talk to. but there's a lot of programs going on in the city, and everybody wants to be part of trying to help this effort. We also have, like I said, so if you look at it, the four main pillars of what we do is the crime initiatives, because I think we've gotten away from that. Our recruiting and retention, which they all tie in, these are competing objectives in a lot of ways. Community policing, and then the biggest one is the DOJ. Now, I'm going to let, if you're okay with it, I'm going to introduce you to Officer Deputy Chief Eric Garcia. I've worked with him for probably close to 20 years. He's got at least 27 years, right?
27 years.
27 years. We kept,
There's still some seats up in the front here too, if you folks want to sit down, standing up there in the back.
at the advice of people that come to DOJ itself, since he was part of the whole program, from start to finish, hopefully to finish. He knows the insight, we kept him, and that's why we restructured the department and created a compliance bureau. It's to kind of put everything together. I think APD got caught off guard with how to organize an effort like this, and maybe that's part of the confusion and the delays. So he can explain some of that, but more importantly, again, we're moving forward, so you want to address just a couple of those?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having us here. Yeah, our approach is going to be different with the whole settlement agreement and the DOJ process. Basically, the chief has given me the authority to create a new team, and with the people we've created, we're going to go in a different direction. My basic thing is you've worked with me in the past, know I like to get input from officers, from sergeants, from the community itself. And that's, to me, that's huge. If we're going to work together in this effort, not only in fighting the crime initiative, what the chief says, and with the DOJ reforms, we need to work together as a community. The chief said one big thing we're working on right now is the use of force policy and the use of force investigations. The officers still need to be held accountable, but we need to free them up so they can be on the streets and they can fight crime, and they can, get with the community so they can solve the issues that concern you the most. Right now, just like I said, 8 to 12 hours, it's a long time to get a supervisor off the street and the officers as well. Right now, like Chief said, we've got a vigorous recruitment effort, but until then, we've got to free up these officers to do their jobs. Because they were hired to do police work, not to sit in an office and do paperwork the entire shift. That being said, they're still going to be held accountable, like I said. But the biggest thing right now is we got to get them involved, get them to understand. I think right now we have a policy that is very difficult for the average officer to understand. Would you say, Joe?
Yes, sir.
So we need to clarify that. We've worked with the police union, which is working with rank and file to create a new process and a new policy. We've got support from the DOJ, we've got support from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the monitoring teams. We're moving forward with that. We had a conference call today. We have a weekly conference call with the monitoring and the parties. And today was one of the first ones I've ever had, I've ever been in, that has been positive. In the past, it's been an adversarial relationship with the monitoring team, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the DOJ. And that definitely is going to change. I don't know if any of you have seen our policy process to create a policy. It's difficult to understand, to say the least. We need to streamline that. I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Harness, Dr. Cass. We want to change that policy. I want input from the community as well. If you've seen that policy, give me your input. Give me a call. Send me an email. We need to know. I'm not, because they made me a deputy chief doesn't give me all the answers. I need help from the community, from the people who serve you. And I'm also going to get input from the officers themselves, because they're the ones who are dealing with the policy. That's the most important. I'm not on the streets every day. I'm going to deal with these policies. The officers are. I think it's really important for us to get their input as well. But that's one of the biggest challenges I think we're facing right now is this force policy. I'm glad that Chris has taken this position. We've worked with him in the past. I think we're very fortunate to have Chris in this position. But I'm willing to take any questions you may have.
So, we're doing paper plates.
Sounds good. Is that easy?
Okay, so okay, I'm coming down the middle and.
You got a policy?
Right? Okay, so number one, go ahead.
Raul Torres, the DA, is asking for some $6 million for a lot of things, but the biggest thing that I heard him present about was a big data base that allows all of the components needed to address crime in one place that everybody can get to, and written so that there's analysis of where, when, and who, and it'll be easier to get a hold to the top 80 criminals. Is that something that you guys would be able to support and be willing to be a part of?
We've already had meetings with them. Let me give you a little history. And I talked a little bit about the file and stuff. That's they have.
Yes.
Everything's a paper file. I mean, we're in the 21st century. What he's doing is, I mean, and again, this is part of, we used to have annual case file. So if an officer made an arrest, a burglary arrest, we do a case report, get everything together, there'd be a checklist, and we turn it into the, I don't know, email to some of the other people that are around.
Can you speak up?
Speak up, please.
That microphone. So what we did, we're working on, we've got some paralegals working for it. The way we just did our budget process, we're going to get paralegals to help prepare cases. Because right now, if it's missing one document in the case file, especially with the time limits that they're under, the case gets dismissed under discovery. So what he's doing is, if he's got to do it, one thing he's done is, before they had different units in the DA's office, property crimes they had. And so if the guy did a burglary one day and another crime the other, it went different areas and everybody handled it independently. Now he's got one DA for one person, so that way that person is well aware. He's trying to, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's going to electronically make those databases out of those paper files.
Yes.
And what that'll do is everything's in there, they'll have their own internal checklist, know what's missing. By sharing our information, first lines, we're protecting some of the databases, having them speak to each other. He can retrieve the evidence. They'll have people to be able to retrieve those reports rather than trying to send an email to an officer that maybe his day's off for 3 days and doesn't answer and says, we need this by tomorrow, and it's not going to occur. So we're supporting it from our end. Again, we're actually putting personnel in the area commands to help get him the information he needs. Some of the money he needs is he needs more prosecutors, he needs more staff. The technology is another aspect that we're working on as well, and so some of that money will go to that. But we've been pretty much, I think we've been back and forth at least once or twice a week with them. They have represented today at one of our meetings about that program, the 300, as well as other shortcomings and issues that they had that we can help with. So yes, to answer your question in simple terms, we're together. It's the first time I think I've seen that kind of relationship with the DA.
And a real quick one, if your forearm was longer, could there be more stripes there?
Remember, I don't have the 20 from Illinois. I wear a short sleeve shirt. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, I have a very easy question for you, and I know that you're going to have the answer. What is your name?
Eric Garcia.
Eric Garcia. See, I told you it was easy.
And my email address is my full name. It's ericgarcia@cabq.gov.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay, number 3?
I appreciate that you're going after repeat offenders and violent criminals, but one of the things that I see most of is people walking down my neighborhood street who appear to me to be jobless and homeless and hungry and insecure. And at the present time, the only thing I know to do is to call APD. That doesn't seem like, it seems to me that we ought to have some other source to deal with people who are not engaged in violent offenses.
Right, and I know the mayor's office, CAO specifically, they're trying to revamp their 311 system because there's resources that are available that you may not know about. And we want to make sure that there are homeless initiatives. I mean, obviously, the panhandle ordinance, some of the things that are going on now, because the jury's out on both sides, and I'm not commenting either way, but those people are out there. I mean, you can't go down I don't know what neighborhood you live in or what area.
San Mateo and Constitution right in the middle.
When you're in that area, there's areas that there's more focus. Downtown is big, southeast area, and central. We do have a coast team, and DC Garcia is working with those programs with mental health. They have that outreach available. It's a hard audience to deal with. They're transit, they're underneath bridges. They really find them one day, and then they may not see them for weeks at a time. There's a lot of services out there that they don't all take advantage of. And so, like, when you see these people, sometimes they'll be, going to asking for help and things like that. It'd be nice if they would take advantage of some of those resources. We'll go there, and that's what the police would do, is they'll try to make a referral, or at least, our job is to help you. And that's somebody's brother, sister, could be somebody's son, daughter, whatever. We know that we have to treat people with respect. Human dignity is the key to what we do. We use that from a procedural justice standpoint. We don't have the trust and legitimacy. So if we treat each of those people and give them that respect, it can't just be this casual encounter. What are you doing after work? If you don't live here, keep moving. We're supposed to divert them to these programs. Some of these new programs, I think with the mobile crisis team, if they're in crisis, someone may be off medication and stuff, is we'll get the team out that has a first responder, an ECIT, an enhanced CIT officer, and a clinician. We can follow up and make sure, because the clinician gives us the ability to get it right past HIPAA, find out who the doctor might be, we may be able to drop them right off, give that officer that resource to maybe just as simple as a phone call. So again, it's not just going to be that adversarial contact, so to speak. It's really going to be with that helping attitude, reaching out. So again, we don't see those people. They may be sleeping behind businesses or badly. We'll get to them. We've seen them in 24-hour restaurants, and a lot of times people walk the other way, we avoid them. But I think that we need to get, they're part of our population, and again, they're part of the community, whether we do something like it.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Over the years, it seems that we're stuck back at square one. What kind of reforms have been made with APD? And we're always stuck on the lapel camera policy, the use of force policy, and still the SOPs haven't been defined. What is community policing? That hasn't been defined. Various groups are being separatists from the rest of us, and if it's going to take all of us to do it, then we got to break that mold.
I'm going to let Eric address the reforms as far as community policing. I can address the issues.
I think you're right. I think we have been on hold, and we haven't made a lot of progress in certain areas. And to be honest with you, I think it had a lot to do with certain people of the past administration. I was there, and it was very frustrating for me because I wanted to work with the community, I wanted to work with certain groups, and at times that wasn't the policy. So right now I'm having to redo a lot of things, to reorganize a lot of sections of the department to get some of this done. Bring in a new attitude. Right now, if anybody wants to be adversarial, I don't have a place for them in my bureau. We need to work together to get this done. Now, I may have to take a step back to fix some of the things that need to be fixed in the past, but I've only been in this job for about a month, and we've already started that. And with the support of the new chief and the new mayor, I believe we can see a lot of things moving forward, and at a decent pace. I mean, there was a base built up, but I think right now, basically, the team I've got together, we have to fix a lot of the issues that were created in the past. A lot of the things were made too difficult, too complicated, not only for the officers and the supervisors out there, but for the citizens as well. Like I said, I already mentioned the policy to create policy. That is, as Mr. Hart, it's a mess. It's broken. And there's several policies that need to be fixed, and that's my number one objective right now. So I'm asking for everybody's input. If there's a policy out there that you want us to change, you think you might have a better way to do things, I need to know.
As far as community policing, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not just a bunch of little programs. We have good, PR programs, like Coffee with a Cop, where we get together. There's there's other neighborhood events that we attend. The horses are there, and put all our units on display, some SWAT teams and all. That's just part of it. The big part is, and the key word is partnership. And it's not just, I mean, we've had in years past, groups that partners with hospitality, with hotels, because of the problems that we've had in their parking lots, cars being stolen, balloons from Green Fest, and events like that. Not very good for economics, bringing people in. If they come here with cars, all the balloons get stolen, they're visiting other people. Probably not going to come back. We've seen that on the news, we've seen those stories. We've had the construction industry for a while, they were getting a lot of equipment stuff. The copper dust, I mean, all groups, financial institutions, and we worked with them, the retail association. All these groups work with property crimes. If you remember around 2010, 11, that's when we saw the big dip. I think actually it was Mayor Barry that started the initiative. The police department focused on those issues. And working with those partners, we identified people, especially with like an aspect of organized crime, for example. They go to one Walmart, steal stuff, they go to another Walmart. If those pictures got around and we get the alerts, we might be able to be there to catch these people if they were available. But they didn't always pass that information out before. So we had meetings and shared that information. But now we're seeing it take a turn to be replacing, we're trying to get back to the neighborhoods. I think we've got away from that. I saw in New York, they changed their strategies to neighborhood policing, and you're talking mostly a high-rise community for the most part of New York. A lot of people owning their own cars in downtown Manhattan area. But it's a different approach, but their crime has gone down to all-time lows. So when you read their stats, their homicides are in the 200s, the high 200s. But we had almost 70, 80, 75 of those. We had, so for a city our size compared to a city New York size, that's significant progress. So, we need to get back to the neighborhoods that we're doing here. But more importantly is there's a lot of resources in communities where some of these diversion programs, say for example, we've got a lot of wayward youth, okay? And there's people that have devoted their whole careers to doing that. They may be retired now, or they may just be part of the ministry with their church or whatever they think they belong to. And they can offer help. They can be those extra bodies that go to the mental health center. One of the things, the reason they say is we don't have the staff or the resources to hold somebody here. We take somebody to juvenile probation and take them to the detention home. They're out. They're from the first minute. The officers will tell you this. I'm sure it's the same way. Bring somebody there. They're already on the phone trying to get somebody. They're not designed for that. What happens between the time they do the crime and when they get go through the adjudication process, which may be months? What are we doing for these people? You've seen them. Parents that are single parents, they don't know where their 15-year-old is at 3 in the morning. And the next thing, you got 5 kids sitting in orange jumpsuits. So, we've got to get more involved with people in the community that possibly can help us with that. And that starts with people like yourself. Everybody brings something to the table. And if we all contributed in that way, I think we would make a difference in some of those areas. A lot of us, and I speak from personal experience, I have family members with abuse and mental conditions. And I joined CIT when we first started in ATD to deal with that, and after my expertise from that standpoint. My daughter works with autistic and special needs kids, so I see that aspect. All these things that, again, these are the lost populations, maybe the underserved populations. So that's about the best way I can describe it. It's the best period of time, but there's many, many components to it, and I think that we're trying to work on kind of solidify that. Does that answer? Does that kind of address it?
Chief Geier, this question's for you, sir. What is your department's policy going to be for citizen ride-alongs? What's going to be the policy? What's going to be the procedure? And what's going to be the qualifications that a citizen is going to have in order to do a citizens police ride-along with your officers? And will there be a follow-up process by anybody else in your department other than the officer that assisted in that ride-along to have input and questions answered for any occurrences that happened on that ride-along?
So you mean that the ride-along, say with you,
Yes.
you had questions what that information loop would be?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll go back to the first part of your question. Typically, we've been very restrictive with that, as far as we don't let people that are maybe applicants for the department and collect weekend. And we've been restricted in terms of even letting the journalists, the media ride. And I think that there's...
Can't hear you. It's way too late. We did.
There's been, it's very restricted, almost like to the point where we're hiding things. Obviously, there's a safety issue, so one of the things that we do, if we do allow, and I know there's a short background, we let, I'll give you an example, we let some UNM students that are part of the criminal justice class be part of this. One of them brought marijuana, another one shows the officer, says, well, you know, we get in trouble, I can help you, and shows a gun. So we have to train, those are the people that don't want to ride along. We vet, I mean, I would say right now, almost anybody in this room would qualify. I mean, and I don't know what our existing policy is, so I'm talking about US and I would allow that, because then you would see exactly what I want you to see, is what our officers do every day. What they face. I mean, obviously, you have to sign a waiver. I mean, it's, you know, it is a high-risk situation. We don't hand out bulletproof vests, and we definitely don't hand out weapons. If we got in trouble, we can teach how to use the radio and get on it and get us help. I think that it's an eye-opener, because in addition to that, I'd like to see people, we have the Citizens Police Academy, but I mean, I'd like to see people go through some of our, you know, we have an alley-based training center, witness that and see it. I know you've probably been there. So I mean, you can speak to it. It's a component of our training that's part of that feedback loop, is that when we identify tactical problems, or particular officers that are having issues, the way they handle calls, you know, we work that end. But if you see that, then you can kind of see where that develops in policy and training issues. But if you want to ride along, I'm going to look at the policy. If you want to leave me a name, if you're interested, it sounds like you might be. As far as the feedback loop, besides that officer, we may give you a survey and just kind of open-ended, or maybe have an online where it gets back to me and a group that we can look at it, kind of see. I mean, in addition to just rating how the officer is friendly, you know, I mean, we can't handpick the officers all the time, so we may get an officer that's just in a bad mood and just not very friendly to you. But I think you would get an eye-opener just from the volume of calls they handle. And I think the officer would be our best commercial for the organization, because he can tell you things that I can't, because they're out there now on the streets doing that day to day. And I think you would get a perspective better than I can give. But if you had some feedback in your survey, and again, I know this was brought up from all these councils, is there's no feedback loop, and something might generate out of these meetings. It goes through from the officers or the commander, and somehow it doesn't come back as far as did we do anything to help you. I guarantee you, if we do those surveys, you know, we'll make that personal call to you, and we'll kind of see, get your take on it. We may even just do that as a matter of routine, but if there is anything that stands out, again, the more information you get from us, I wouldn't get that information just from, you know, kind of, if I roll along, I guarantee you, maybe you have the best behavior, and the best steer, white knuckles in the steering wheel. I'm not gonna get that, but you know, if they warm up to you and there's a little rapport, you know, they may say, you know, well, you know, the chief, he shouldn't be doing this, and you know what, I welcome it. We all have to have a self-assessment and critique system, so I'll look at that policy. If you leave me a card or just give me a name, I'll write it on a piece of paper.
I will do that.
And then we'll look at, like I said, I don't know what the existing policy is, so I don't want to bring a policy just yet, but we can make exceptions.
I will leave you my name and my. This question is for you, Deputy Chief Garcia. You had stated in your presentation that you want the officers to get very acquainted with the SOPs and processes. Are you going to make it a policy that your officers out in the field have in hand a hard copy of the SOPs? And are you going to make SOPs available at the command centers for any citizen or any officer to view? And how are those policies going to be interpreted other than by a dateline to the previous policy that existed? How do we know as a citizen, by looking at the three processes of the SOP, how each policy is entwined to anything that's occurring within the SOP? And is there going to be more of an interpreted way to understand the changes that the DOJ is bringing about for those processes to take place?
Absolutely. First of all, we make it more clear and more understandable. As far as having a hard copy in the car, I'll be honest with you, when I was an officer, I really didn't look at my hard copy a whole lot. The officers get the SOP right now electronically, and they have to sign for it. And currently, they do give input to the SOP through a system called Power DMS where they can leave comments. I want to expand upon that though. I'm forming groups to give me direct input from all different areas of the city and different ranks, so I can get their ideas on each policy. And I want them to be interested. I don't want to force anybody to do it. I want their volunteer input there. We can have hard copies at the substation. The only thing is that we review our policies now every 6 months. They go through a process to review. So basically they have an expiration date. The easiest way to do it right now to keep up is electronic, to be honest with you. The officers have Wi-Fi in their vehicles and they can pull up that information readily. They can look up a policy, they can look it up on their computer in the car. And of course they can access it from the substations as well. So the hard copy with the officer, we could do that. I don't believe the officers are going to use it a whole lot. I believe they'll use electronic. They're using electronic version a lot more. We can ask the officers themselves if they ever have a hard copy or an electronic copy. At the sub, we can keep a hard copy, but then again, I guess you're looking at again, we're having to update it on a regular basis. And we could do that and have a master hard copy. If we do that, then we have to have it in each substation.
So, and from a practical standpoint, and I'm always good, so I asked for the copy, is this thing. So for the officer that's on the call, and there's no search engine on, other than table of contents, the search engine really can do a sound like search. And to be honest, and Joe, in your day, what was your policy? I mean, 12 pages, 25.
You'll
Yeah. So,
you put it in your pocket.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is their understanding of the policy, and that comes through the training. Because there's subset, I mean, if they have to say section 2-53, subsection B-22, you're not going to know what that policy is. So it has to be instinctive. And the understanding is, for officers, is it's basically going to be instinctive. And then we're going to judge them on what, on these either policy sections were written by the officers who made mistakes and things like that, and you got to create these policy sections. But I mean, there's a lot in those policies. So they expect the officer, even when they study for promotion tests, and they'll study all our policy manuals, the administration manual, general orders, and especially procedural orders. So that's 3 manuals we have, and if they're in a special unit like field services, they get another manual, investigations. There's a lot of policy out there. But I think after a while, it becomes instinctive. It's most of that policy, as it ranges to how to fill out a report, to how to handle a roll call, and robbery in progress. After a while, it becomes instinctive. They don't have to refer to it. It's when we get a new change that changes the dynamics. And I think we've kind of hit on it, is that sometimes 30,000 feet, we may think this is the best policy ever. And I get it through it, and finally get back to those officers in the back, and they look at it and they go, this isn't going to work. Why didn't they check with us? And you know what? If we don't get their buy-in and we don't get that understanding, it's going to be bad policy. And again, having you guys ride along, if you ask the officers about the policy and there's something that there's confusion, you come back to me. I mean, I don't expect my officers to know verbatim, but instinctively I expect them to, understanding is to know what's right and wrong in certain situations. And a lot of times, the subsections and little things that catch officers and things like that, they're almost like umbrella clauses. You can interpret it any way you want. And I think that's where the confusion lies. It's, Joe, I've seen agencies change the less policies rather than more, because, this is the information age, but unless I can stick a memory stick in my ear, I'm not going to remember all this stuff. So then I don't expect the officers in the heat of the moment to be able to quote that policy, but I hope that they understand it. And that's where the reinforcement of training, both in service, I mean, from the academy level to the field training to in-service and any advanced training they take, that builds their experience so that they acquire that sense of, like a good, woodworker or something. I mean, they're not going to go like, well, let me see, step 1, do this. It just comes naturally. So, does that answer?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, the other thing electronically that helps Chief is that in our current policy, our SOP, we can put the hyperlink in there. So for related policies, let's say with the settlement agreement, the officer can put on a related policy, on the hyperlink, and it'll take them to that policy better and look it up, and they can do it much quicker.
And we're going to try, part of the annual report and part of the city, we try to report all these policies on that. So, because people import policies all the time, we've got nothing. There's a few policies that may be confidential in terms of procedures or practices, like say, the SWAT call out, we don't want people to know what we're going to be doing next, or they're confidential related to investigations or say informants and things like that. But most of our general policy, there's nothing to hide here. But, I mean, you're welcome to go through it, you'll see yourself just how the volumes of work that's gone into that. Now, there are cycle dates where, they expire at a certain point, or we review them at a certain point, and there's always the possibility for taking on special orders and all, but where we identify things that need to be changed now, rather than go through all those policy and procedure boards that could take months, because we can do some immediate changes when we recognize things that are strict. And again, right now, getting input from the officers makes that process of developing policy that much easier. And guess what? By having their buy-ins, it's part of their baby, they're going to do it because they contributed. So, we're not the experts, and we'll be the first to admit is that we're making mistakes, and it's a great responsibility to be that last person to sign it. But if I know it came from many sources, I'm going to trust their judgment.
Okay, number 6, we're good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
My name is Michael, and I represent the neighborhood associations in this district, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming to this meeting and for your dedication, both of you for community policing. I wanted to thank Commander Joe Burke for always attending our meetings, as well as Councilor Brad Winter and Don Murray for always being there to listen to our concerns. In the upcoming legislation session, there's a few of one of our senators, Daniel Ivey Soto and Nate Gentry, representative, have gone together to introduce some legislation, some ideas, and one of those is concerning prisoners getting enrolled in Medicaid before they are released from jail, so that they can continue their follow-up with their treatment for substance abuse disorders. And I was just wondering I don't know if you can comment specifically on legislation, but I was wondering if there are any pieces of legislation that you would like that you're following, that you support.
Well, again, it's a short session, so we don't have high hopes for a lot of moving forward, but I know that one of the things that we're looking at is funding. I think the governor's, intending to fund some of the different programs, that being one of them. The resources that we have never been, we proposed, and Joel went on how many times, these folks, Senator Randall, former PCSO, Jackson, has proposed pro-law enforcement things, whether it's anti-gang legislation. The 3 strikes, I'm all for that. I think we've had that in effect, we've just never used it. If you go to California, those offenders, they know that they get the 3rd one. That's the problem, is they leave California when they're on strike 2, and guess where they come from? Somewhere around here. So, I think that would have a good, not that I want to trouble our neighboring states, but better they be somewhere else than them here, to be honest, because we're suffering. I think any kind of pro-law enforcement legislation, the legislature can be funny because they can change like that, and you don't know who's going to support them. It's part of the New Mexico Police Chiefs Association. We have lobbyists that support the bills that we need to support. And so, without commenting specific on any of those, is anything you see in the House bills and the Senate that are coming up those ways, that say police or law enforcement or public safety, I'm for all of them. It's as simple as that can be.
Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you to the CPC Council, the council. You guys put in a lot of work.
Okay, number 7.
So I want to just jump in here real quick, guys. We're already about 10 minutes over our allotted time here. We'll probably allow a couple more questions here, maybe go to about 7:45, and then we're going to have to cut comments off. So if you want to keep your comments short, let's try and get a few more in so that everybody has a chance.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Chief, thank you so much for serving, and thank you for answering the call. And thank you, each and every officer, for putting your job, your life on the line every single day. I want you to know you have a lot of us that respect you, and we thank you. There are some of us that are here that want to start our own neighborhood community patrolling. We've got volunteers, we want to get shifts, we want to go out and make sure these people that are driving our streets, walking the streets just looking for empty cars or doors, we want them to know that there's people around. And unfortunately, we're going to drive them to another neighborhood, which is why we need to do something about the problem. But we're tired of living this way. I go to sleep every night. I put a tool in my garage door so someone cannot roll up my door. That assures me that no one's coming through my garage. Because on our street recently, someone went into an empty garage and had a fun time. So we're unsafe. 2, is there anything being talked about to increase visibility? I mean, we don't see officers just driving through neighborhoods. 3, follow through. For those of us that have witnessed or been involved in a crime and filled out an accident report, we never hear back. And we ultimately know what that means. There's not enough help, there's not enough resources, but sometimes it might be I think the thing to do is for the officer to reach back to the victim and say, look, your case is not going anywhere, we just don't have the time or the resources to put into it, and at least let that person know that nothing more is happening. Because believe it or not, we all do communicate, and then we know that we feel like we got blown off. And then finally, a fast response time is really important. These criminals know how much time they have. And I had shots fired outside my house. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. My time's up. Took an officer 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah. Every one of those questions.
And these criminals would know, if you're going to get there quicker, they don't have 15 minutes. Let's cut it to 5.
And I'll probably start with that question.
Start with the community question, please.
Okay.
About your position on us patrolling our own neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. We're trying to move along here. I appreciate
If
you
you want to
coming.
step outside, I'll answer the question.
Sure.
And then I'll get your information, because I know you guys got this.
Number 8.
Okay, before I came here, I saw on TV where at Chipotle by the university, some vagrant came in there and started with a knife and some brass knuckles and was knocking things around and stuff. And you guys, wow, congratulations. I mean, it's your profession, and I know you did well on that one. But the same thing happened. I'm the chairman of the board of the Albuquerque Indian Center. It's on Texas and Zuni, way over there in quote-unquote the original war zone, but now the international. So the same thing happened about 4 weeks ago. We were closing up and one of the people decided, I'm not going. And he stayed there for 2 hours. We called the police 5 times. 2 hours later, the police showed up, walked in, and the guy ushered him out. He didn't do any damage. But it's really interesting that kind of thing happens. The reason I say it's interesting because I came to a meeting here about a couple months ago, and the ACLU fellow was here, the lawyer, and he seemed to me, I thought he said that anytime you people, the police touch somebody, that's force. So I don't think that is force. But if we have those people that are out there saying that, well then I think you guys can't even do your job. You might as well just go away and get paid and let the criminals do their duty to us and take us out to lunch.
I think I can answer it because we had this discussion with this new policy. You have to be at a low level. I mean, we've been faced with issues where you have somebody that's on a stretcher, they can be handcuffed, and they're kicking their legs as the paramedics are trying to deal with them. The officer holds the guy's legs down. Is that use of force? You've got somebody that you're holding handcuffs and they just turn and you have to pull it back. Is that a use of force? Is that going to be interpreted as a very low level use of force? I don't even know if they call it force per se, but by the DOJ's definition, we have to document it and make sure that we account for it. But you're right, force in itself isn't a bad thing. We have to do force sometimes. If somebody's fighting and they're coming at us, we're not going to turn away and run. And we have to protect these people like yourself. So I think that that's an issue that we're addressing because we're breaking it down from that low level, which is that what we just talked about, to use of force, like an arm bar or something where we have to put our hands on, to look different layers of what they call serious use of force, all the way up to an officer involved deadly force incident. And by breaking it down like that, is that we don't want to get the confusion is that everything is at this level. Because probably most of what we do is very much just the communication aspect. And that's not force at all, that's just persuasion in most cases. So we are addressing that, and I know there was kind of a dual question there about response time. Again, the recruitment effort, hopefully by getting more officers in the street, will reduce that response time. There's no reason, sometimes even just answering the 911 calls, they're short-staffed as well. But I mean, we only have so many officers, and they do a priority-based system, so that the people that have more serious crimes, just like triage in the hospital, you know, sometimes you've done a UNM, you don't know how long you've got to sit there for the appointment, or just see them. So we can't do anything right now. I wish I had those answers, but I guarantee you, at least for the priority 9 calls, hopefully they're getting there much quicker than 30 minutes. And so I think that that's the case. I've seen officers clear other calls to go to those. Because they know that those are the hot calls. They know what officers want to respond to and make sure that they take care of business. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, so we have one last.
Yeah, given that this CPC has been on hiatus since November of last year, could you explain to the public what the process was for the selection of the new CPC manager?
I just started in December, so this is still a new process for us. They didn't do this before we passed this.
No, I don't have that information. I can get back to you. I'm shooting an email. I know it was vacated by Nicole back in, I think, October or November.
Right, but Eric, the bigger point is, if this just happened while we were gone, there was no public input into the selection.
Gotcha, I see what you're saying.
And that's not part of the mandate, and that's not part of reform, for there to be no public input into the process. Right? Thank you.
I want to thank Chief Geier and Deputy Chief Garcia for being here tonight, and